had, a non-human face, and you would say reptilian face, extremely powerful being, and so powerful that it's like it radiates power. There's no there is no disrespecting these types of entities. The mere fact that you're in their presence and they're not trying to destroy you is a privilege and an honor.
Hmm.
And I guess one of the things is I've always been extremely open-minded and neutral. And I think this is one of the things that if you're going to have encounters with non-human entities is sort of a prerequisite, in my opinion. I mean, just as humans don't want to talk with any old person off the street, neither do they. They're discerning and discriminating. And it simply told me humans are our drug. Very succinct and to the point. I'll just step back for 2 steps with those guys who talked about it being a Frisian. Earlier in the conversation, they were talking about summoning demons and boasting about it, which is why I brought up the subject to begin. So this is exactly what certain occult secret societies do in their lodges. Okay. And they, there's a lot of concepts to work through. The simplest way to understand this is a lot of people would think that, everything's got to be like Independence Day. The big UFO comes, blasts the White House, takes over a planet that way. That's a very human way of looking at these things with biases. And it's exaggerated in this cartoonish way so that people don't think about the fact that perhaps if we've been colonized a lot earlier on, and now and then we start to see these forces reemerge more openly in our society. And if we're still thinking, the way that we've been taught to think has been carefully curated so we don't figure this out. I liken it a lot to it's like horses with blinders. We are taught to see what we see and not in the peripheral vision. If you're familiar with the paranormal, paranormal occurs in the peripheral vision. If the eye is trained to look forward, we are the beast of burden that's being ridden upon. I was trying to create a model of history many years ago. I was like, how is it that we have the occult forces that have been with us? And if I were to create a model of history that was saying that there was this non-human element through our history, how would I create a model to explain that? Where we could both think we are aware and yet be directed by unseen forces. And it came down to that, the idea of the horse and its blinders. And we can illustrate the blinders in different ways. They can be perceptual based off of our language, our notions of science, down to how we see things. And I believe these perceptual blinders, as well as the fact that frequencies, we know we see a small amount of the visible spectrum. We know we hear a small amount. These have been restricted. We've been dealing with a dampening. There's a dampening device. I believe humans are a lot more capable, are a lot more powerful. And we certainly did not come about to be through Darwinian evolution. That to me is quite obvious. I mean, this is very naive. So, how could we explain it? And there's a rider on our backs, and that is the non human force.
Mm.
We are beasts of burden. for the non-human force. And it is extracting our life force in ways that we do not understand. We look at the cymatics of how cities are organized, how architecture is organized. It is harvesting energy. Stadiums are built for energy harvesting. We know this, right? Sports teams, because at the end, it's a battery. You have the opposing teams because you're trying to have the opposition, and it's building a battery. It's all about the energy. And in psychoanalysis, it would be called the libidinal political economy, meaning the political economy of the libido, of our energy. Our emotions are very powerful. Anybody who's ever been in an argument with their partner or their child will realize how physically draining an intense emotional encounter is. I mean, I've done it. You've probably done it. I mean, I could do a 12-hour shift at a physical labor is easier than an intense argument. There's a lot of energy in that. It explains a lot too about Scientology in Hollywood. They're teaching people things. They're teaching them exactly that, how to do it. These Scientology seminars are doing what? Now, I don't want to disparage people if that's their religion, but I do want to point out that there is that link. There is a reason why it's as big as it is. And these are the old ways. People have been doing this for a very long time. And if they want the success, that's what happens. And like any demonic entity, it will promise gifts and power for a price. Again, we talk about certain groups. They love to talk about their great work. Mm-hmm. What is the great work? It's to bring us to this point. And the point that we're going to be coming into in the next few years and decades will be the completion of the great work. And at that point, there is no more human resistance. It will be complete. The potential for shaking it off will not exist. Now, I don't like to be dark and pessimistic, but I'd really like people to get off their butts and realize the gravity of the situation, how deep it goes, and what we really actually have to debrief ourselves on to understand how far this mind virus has wormed its way into our existence.
Welcome to Beyond Forbidden. Today on the show, I got Dan Armstrong. I first came across him on James Bartley's podcast, The Cosmic Switchboard. Love James Bartley's podcast. I'm actually kind of new to the scene following James Bartley, but on his member site. But I've been following James Bartley's site or research for a very long time. And he had Dan Armstrong on the show, and I was like, man, let me get this guy on the show. But welcome to the show, Dan. How you doing, man?
Very good, thanks.
So, where can people? Let's throw everything out. Where can people follow you? Like, do you do social media, website, or other things?
You know, I had a real doozy of a time getting my website going, and very slow and maybe a bit too much of a perfectionist for my own channel. I'll be eventually releasing some stuff on my channel. So I've just been working and doing interviews as the way to get myself going at the beginning. So just look up my name and you'll see it. I've done some stuff with Disclosure Now, with the FKN network, and Typical Skeptic podcast. Mm-hmm. So all good places. A lot of work, a lot of good people that I'd be meeting through all of that.
So, like I told you right before we started recording, at least we may touch several different topics, but at least right now I want to talk about the darker aspects because I like to
Yeah.
focus on the dire situations that we face as humanity, society, individually, the traumas, the all of that, because the good out there, that's all good and dandy, but I want to face the problem head on. That's why I like to more talk about the darker aspects, because I feel like so I feel like we're definitely under some type of like non-human spiritual warfare, whether you believe in God or not. The very
Absolutely.
nature of our existence and everything about what makes us human, Dan, is under some type of spiritual and psychological attack to keep the human race from reaching its truest and highest potential. I firmly believe these elitists, Illuminati, or whatever you want to call them, these bastards are being controlled and are guided by some type of dark, non human, archonic force to help push AI, transhumanism, chemtrails, poison foods, propaganda, New World Order. The list goes on and on. So these elites, or the global elite conspiracy to control every facet of humanity, is under a constant and perpetual state of attack, fear, and survival mode. We're in a constant state of survival mode. So in plain and simple language, Dan, who and or what is pushing all of this down our throats? You know what I mean? Like,
Yep.
what is your take on this? What's the ultimate agenda and reasoning for steering humanity in this Orwellian dystopian future that we are facing now? We're in the baby stages right now, like that Blade Runner type society.
Yeah, exactly. All good questions. And I think that's what a lot of people are trying to grapple with. Um, just like you, I was having similar questions. Um, I did my degree in politics and native studies when I went to college. And I started to realize, even in studying politics at a pretty deep level, that there was something more than what I was being told behind the works. I studied all the issues. This was back in mid 90s to early 2000s. And it was being pretty obvious then that our reality was starting to fall apart and our notion of reality. So it's come in a series of stages to me. So I like to try to walk people through it. Let me, I'll just start with saying I started to realize when I was studying it that there was an issue with the financial system. That's what I really started to see in politics. The financial system was a metaphysical system that was controlling the nature of our reality, that it was dictating the nature of our reality. Rather than merely reflecting the economy, it was an interface layer that was dictating how our reality ran. So that was pretty big in itself. And I got pretty deep on that. And I did my own personal paper that I got in a lot of trouble over, that basically barred me from moving further in my studies, even though I'd developed a very good relationship with my professor. And it also didn't help that, and I'll just jump straight into your answer. I just thought I'd preface it with that first.
All right.
Also didn't help that around the time before I graduated, I had a very paranormal experience, extremely unique, that I haven't heard anybody else having. And even people like James, who he's read his UFO literature and
Mm-hmm.
has interviewed a lot of people and been in this for a long time, as well as an experiencer. And he never came across anything like this. And essentially, I was accosted by a being with my friends one day. We're at night, took a course together, and it was after a class party. It was a summer school class. And how can I put this without it I don't know if this is too woo for your channel. I hope
No,
not. I think you got a
no,
lot.
no.
But basically, yeah, so we're just walking up the main drag. It's a college town, pretty small, the kind of place that they developed in the 60s to offload stuff from the cities and sort of give some revitalization to these places. And walking up the street, and I don't do this often. I just noticed that there was something really strange about a truck that was coming the opposite way down the street towards us. It's around 11 o'clock at night. And I didn't like what I was picking up. This isn't something I do regularly. I don't talk about the energy of this or anything else. Anyhow, it got stopped at the light, and after it turned green, peeled through real fast. And we expected it to just dart down the street, the main drag. Like an old little town, they had the, the sidewalk comes in so that vehicles could park back in the
Mm-hmm.
day. There's a bank. We're just walking up towards the bank. And instead of peeling through, it just swerved right over next to us. Startled me. The next thing we did was, because it was so startling, we all turned our heads at the same time. I was on the most right, and it was on our right. And the next thing I know, I was paralyzed. And the people on the truck, the driver instigated this, and well, it commenced with, after the paralysis, sent out this, and it wasn't visible. I just know what it did. Sent out like this psychic dart.
Mm-hmm.
It went straight into our heads. I liken it like the tasers, the ones that have the cords.
Yeah.
Like this, boom, right into our heads. And that not only went in, but it it primed us for fear. The next thing I know is the face is starting to shape shift, and a loosh energy harvesting is taking place in the public, live, going back and forth, back and forth. I can't even
Were
explain how
were
fast.
were you completely sober during this?
Yeah, I mean, literally maybe 1 or 2 beers that night, and this was
Mm-hmm.
hours later. Okay, it was not like
Yeah.
super drunk or anything else. And it, big grin, big evil grin that kept sort of shaping and morphing as we did
Mm-hmm.
it. Now, I wasn't actually afraid. I just want to lay that out. Sort of sounds strange. I wasn't afraid, but it's like I said, this priming of fear in us did do that. And I noticed it was feeding off this fear that it had elicited. The whole thing lasted under 10 seconds. But in that kind of situation, it feels really long.
Mm-hmm.
Big, grand. Now, what I'm not saying is that it shapeshifted and that was like a physical one. I think it was a psychic projection that was occurring.
Almost like a observer effect or whatever, or maybe you saw something different than you had one or two friends with you.
I had two other friends, so my friend and her partner.
What did they witness compared to you?
Well, that's just it. So finally, after the 10 seconds, pulled my head away. We're released. Pulled my head away, completely floored, and I said out of the side of my mouth, "Did that just happen to you guys?"
What they say?
And they said, "Shut up, keep walking." Turned over my shoulder. I looked, and the driver had caught out and went to go into the ATM. We then walked up a couple of blocks where our vehicle was parked and locked the doors and stayed there till dawn, processing what had happened to us. And they saw the same thing. So I'm really big as an investigator in extracting data points from experiences and thinking deeply about it, what they call in philosophy phenomenology, breaking
Mm-hmm.
it down in very fine increments. And it's quite interesting. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Pierre Sabak. I mean, I always,
Oh yeah,
if you're never going
he's
to have a podcast without me talking about Pierre Sabak.
yeah. I haven't had him on the pod. I've communicated with him. I haven't had him on the podcast yet, but I've followed his work for a while, and man, it's deep, very deep.
And I really recommend to people, if you're serious, look into it. He's come out with a new book just now called Angelic Invasion, and he gets even deeper into it. So,
You're not going to read his material or even watch his interviews like understand. You got to
no,
actually study these things. You got to take increments of it at a time and digest it.
yeah, but Pierre can tell
It's
you
so
more in
deep.
30 seconds than most people can in
True. Yep.
100
True.
hours of podcast.
Mm-hmm.
It's very dense. You have to buy the books. There's no
Mm-hmm.
way around it. And
Mm-hmm.
even with the books, I mean, I think I spent a good year just studying his book inside and out, reading it a million times. But it's one of my future projects is to actually break down this experience according to a lot of the work he's done and understanding the language. This is very familiar with what we talk about. I would describe it rather than trying to push it in and say reptilian or anything else, very along those lines, but more like what he would describe as, well, very similar though with the reptilians and very similar to a goblin. There's all these things if we go back through history describing this. People say, I'm a God fearing man. They don't know what they're talking about because the fear isn't, I have a respect. They think it means I have a respect for what God commands. And it's extremely controversial, but Pierre is saying Yahweh is this type of entity. It induces fear. Heil, a goblin, and all of this, the grimace, the clown, the Nephilim clown. Um, so
It is interesting, like in the Old Testament, where very vengeful, wrathful, uh, uh, God Yahweh.
mhm,
And then in the new, it's almost like the New Testament was written from the people worshiping a different God. Was it
yeah,
the Sumerians, who they maybe Inky, because Inky's connected to fish and the sea, the waters, and Jesus uses, what do you see on cars? Fish. Like, is there a connection there?
yeah, absolutely.
Did the roles change?
Thank you for bringing that up. So um, the other thing that it's hard, like I say, even just that experience, it lasted 10 seconds. I could probably spend an hour if I went through and breaking it all down. But one of the things that happened was there was also a sound that accompanied this visual morphing as well as the energy being exchanged. And it sounded like a fish.
Hmm.
It had this, and I know it sounds a bit absurd. So it sounded like it sounded like some kind of fish, aquatic entity as well,
Hmm.
which I thought very interesting because in Pierre's work, this goes into um, Dagon, which
Mm-hmm.
is the fish god,
Mm-hmm.
right? And this is the Babylonian fish god. This is what we're looking at with the Pope wearing his mitre,
Yeah.
fish. So, so later in town, I mean, you have an event like this. It's very hard. It's something that when you have something in your reality that the accounting system of our reality doesn't account for, it really disturbs you, like really intense paranormal events. So I was visiting some people one day. I'll admit it. I was going to pick up something, and I was talking to them. I didn't know them very well. I was down in the basement, but I knew the one guy. He was always really weird, in my opinion. Hey, I was down there, and I was talking to these guys, and I was describing this experience. And one of them said, "Oh yeah, that's a Frisian."
Hmm.
What? I didn't know. And sort of the leader in the group said, "Shut up. Don't talk like that to a Highlander," right? Because I'm Scottish descent.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know what he meant. So I looked it up later, and Frisia is an area of the Netherlands. As you know, the Netherlands is very watery,
Yeah.
very swampy.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew that this being was from a neighboring county close to there called Prince Edward County. It's very paranormal as well as the one that I was in. Very known for being very swampy. It's a very old being. I think this is a being that came over a long time ago from the old world. And that in itself is just really different. I've never heard that data point before. Anyhow, when you have that kind of event, it really makes you look at things differently. And I had many in that town. I don't know if you've heard of Manly P. Hall.
Oh yeah.
That's where Manly P. Hall was born,
Hmm.
was in this town in Canada. And I had more paranormal experiences there than, well, than most places up to that point. So this is my very personal experience that I illustrate it with. And I sort of prefaced it with the political side of things. But I've been on this quest for decades now to understand what it is because the regular political answers just weren't cutting for me. And I've got to the point now between Pierre's work and then trying to extend it and really looking at what this non-human force is. That clearly there was, we assume that we are the apex species on this planet. And that is a fallacy. So I'll illustrate it with one other experience I have just to sort of, and you can stop me at any point
I'm
and
getting
ask
a little bit
the
of feedback. I
details.
don't know if it's your microphone. It almost sounds like that sound you were talking about with the whoosh whoosh.
Oh, you know what it is? It's my coffee maker.
Oh, okay.
Just
That's all good. I barely hear it. I was making sure
okay.
it wasn't your microphone. Okay, because the coffee
Okay.
maker will stop here in a minute.
All right. Yeah. Um,
I was thinking, is that sound coming back?
I gonna well if that stuff didn't scare you yet, the next one will. Um, so the next one I have, it was I don't I don't I know the difference between dreams and what I call alternate reality experiences. I just refuse to chalk this up to that. I know the difference. I understand the symbolism, etc. I had talked to, I guess the simplest way to explain it would be extremely powerful negative 6D reptilian.
Hmm.
What? What are you
Go
talking
ahead.
about?
Go ahead. You
And
you can't get too woo on this podcast. So keep going, man.
all right. And so it's, massive in every sense of the term. I don't know how to measure the height of things after things are. I'm 5'10", so once it's over 6'3", I consider it huge, you know, and and built like insanely, and it had a non-human face, and you would say reptilian face, extremely powerful being, and so powerful that it's like it radiates power. There's no there is no disrespecting these types of entities. The mere fact that you're in their presence and they're not trying to destroy you is a privilege and an honor.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess one of the things is I've always been extremely open-minded and neutral. And I think this is one of the things that if you're going to have encounters with non-human entities is sort of a prerequisite, in my opinion. I mean, just as humans don't want to talk with any old person off the street, neither do they. They're discerning and discriminating. And it simply told me humans are our drug.
Mm.
Very succinct and to the point.
That not to cut you off, but that what makes me think that to kind of connect it a little bit with bringing in with the AI and the emergence of these technologies, artificial intelligent technologies. That's why I think maybe I don't know Elon Musk, certain elites or technocrats, who
Mhm.
I think they're getting a helping hand, a guiding hand, rather consciously or subconsciously, maybe like a leech, a parasitic, whatever on the subconscious mind, whatever.
Sure.
They're getting a helping hand pushing these merging technologies
Mhm.
because,
Oh,
like,
oh, a little bit more than a helping hand.
but
Even,
I
yeah,
guess I guess what I'm trying to say is, and I mentioned this before in another podcast.
yeah,
Okay, you said something that made me think I had to pull up one of these notes here. Because it
sure,
made me think of it. Because
yeah.
with our devices, our phones, computers, so can entities or some other dark interdimensional force manifest through crystals in our electronic devices, phones, computers,
Mhm.
etc. And can
Mhm.
these crystals act as a conduit for these malevolent forces to manifest from the other side? Maybe these crystals in our devices can make it easier for these entities to manifest from the other side through the black mirror of our devices.
Mhm.
Once this happens, these entities play tricks on one's subconscious minds as some type of parasitic archonic trickster while attaching to us like a soul sucking parasite. And once we do not have our devices, such as our phones, just for an example, we go through
Mhm.
withdrawals, just like a crack kid needing a fix. Was this all a part of the agenda by using precious crystals and metals within computers, cell phones, and other related devices to act as a doorway, a portal to these non human forces to pierce the veil into our reality?
Yes. That is not the only way they're doing it, and it's not anything new. The term Black Mirror goes back to the days of John Dee, as you may be aware.
Mm-hmm.
And anybody who's studied that, he was using scrying mirrors.
Mm-hmm.
The mirror itself can serve as an interface. I'll just step back for 2 steps with those guys who talked about it being a Frisian. Earlier in the conversation, they were talking about summoning demons and boasting about it, which is why I brought up the subject to begin. So this is exactly what certain occult secret societies do in their lodges. Okay. And they, there's a lot of concepts to work through. The simplest way to understand this is a lot of people would think that, everything's got to be like Independence Day. The big UFO comes, blasts the White House, takes over a planet that way. That's a very human way of looking at these things with biases. And it's exaggerated in this cartoonish way so that people don't think about the fact that perhaps if we've been colonized a lot earlier on, and now and then we start to see these forces reemerge more openly in our society. And I think the only difference that we're having now is that veil is thinning, which is why there is this aggressive push towards the censorship and the misdirection and a lot of the chaos. So I would completely agree. And things like crystals have always been used for it. I mean, I don't know if you've ever had these kinds of experiences, but I mean, entities manifest into this realm through a number of ways, portals. Something as simple as once when I had an abduction, I was in my sister's backyard. It's a sort of open concept backyard where all the neighbors, they don't have fences so that things like the deer can run freely through. And there's a blackberry thicket, bushes. And I was out having a smoke in the backyard. That's my way of having peace. And there was an owl in the tree. Woo! And I knew as soon as I heard that owl, I said to myself, oh no, it's happening again. Now, I have no conscious recall ever of an abduction.
Yeah.
But you see, the memory block had been suspended for that very short increment of time.
Deliberately.
And well, yeah, it's just because I'm now going through the process that the block is not necessary. The sequence of events that would happen next would lay it. It's almost like a legal disclaimer just before something bad happens. That's what it serves a function as. So, and the next thing I know, the Greys had portaled through the blackberry thicket and came towards me. 3 or 4, it was murky, it was dark. Whoa. And and then memory wipe from there. And then the next thing I know, I didn't have a watch, I wasn't looking at time. The next thing I know, I was facing in the opposite direction. And this place is on a hill. There's it's water and a bay. And I saw a giant V-shaped craft. The size I don't play football. I know Americans love to measure things in football fields, but it was huge. It was, I'd say at least, I don't know, mile long, massive, illuminated, going through the clouds. And I know what happened. So my point with that is, I think anything can serve as a portal. It doesn't have to be, it doesn't need much. It just needs to have a construct, just like in magic. So the relationship, one of the big lies that we've been told is that magic and technology are antithetical to each other. They're opposites. They are not. They are one and the same. Some people like to describe it as technology is just complicated, or magic is just technology we don't understand. But I wouldn't say it's just that. In the healing modality I use, I deal a lot with these types of forces. And going right back to the old gods, right? Horus, reptilians, greys, and they use voodoo. They use shamanism in, as well as technology. So, yes,
Let me play you this clip real fast.
sure.
Do you know Terrence Howard? He's a Hollywood actor. He's been in, oh man, it seems like
I'm trying to
hundreds of
think.
movies. He's been in the TV show Empire, um, Triumph,
Oh,
Cutthroat City, Gully, Cardboard Boxer, Prisoners, Red Tails. It's
I
I
gotta
think
see.
he was
I
even in
gotta see
Iron
his
Man.
face, and I'll know.
I'm about to show you this little clip real
Okay.
fast. Let me go ahead and screen share here.
Well, as an actor, you're more like a medium. When
Hmm.
you really get there, you go into this zone and you really divorce yourself of who you are, and you just become a garment that something else puts on. Now, right. A lot of people sit up there and do impersonations of other folks, instead of allowing that spirit, but I sit up and I'll pray for a little bit and go in a dark place, go in a bathroom, turn off the lights, look in the mirror. Um, we'll have the light on at first, and then after 1 minute, turn the light off, and and search until you see your own glow, your own aura, and then you watch it change. Wow. And it's a scary thing, because you'll feel like some hands are on you. Wow. And you lose a little bit of control of what you're doing. But if you stay with it, you'll be inhabited by something, and then you walk out.
What?
What do you think of that, man?
Oh, wow.
See, that's out in the open. That's him. What are they doing that we aren't being told? And how many other high stature people, and he's just kind of a low man on the totem pole when it comes to Hollywood, the elites, and, like, what are they doing to conjure to? But hell, we're even doing it in our own community with CE5,
That's right.
like, to me, that's just my personal opinion. To me, that's
Yeah,
dangerous, like,
I agree. I
even with
think
a even with a Ouija board. You may have some people
mhm,
that are pros and know with it. I don't trust it, because I know evil exists. I know these malevolent forces exist, and I don't want any. And I've had attachments to me before. I'm pretty
mhm.
sure they were. I've explained it on some older podcasts, and I don't want things to lurk around and attach to me, man. You know.
You're wise. I agree. And people are. It's like I say. It's like going on a joyride.
Well,
You don't
I
have a
had to
vehicle,
play that
and you
because
are high and drunk and everything else, and you think it's a great idea. Like, it is one of the worst things you can do
I had to play
without
that
those
because you brought up
safety
the mirror.
protocols.
You brought
Yeah.
up the mirror, and he's talking about how he tries to
Hmm.
conjure, manifest, these ideas and thoughts by having help for these other entities by staring in a dark room into the mirror.
And I'm sure, there's, and it explains a lot too about Scientology in Hollywood. They're teaching people things. They're teaching them exactly that, how to do it. These Scientology seminars are doing what? Now, I don't want to disparage people if that's their religion, but I do want to point out that there is that link. There is a reason why it's as big as it is. And these are the old ways. Um, People have been doing this for a very long time. And if they want the success, that's what happens. And like any demonic entity, it will um, it will promise gifts and power for a price.
Mm-hmm. And you brought up true, and you brought up Scientology. Created by L. Ron Hubbard, and L. Ron Hubbard was friends with Jack Parsons and stole Jack Parsons' wife, and Jack Parsons was friends with Aleister Crowley, and like occult,
Yes,
very occult
and
foundation there.
well, it actually goes into the Rosicrucians. I mean, the real ones, not the public facade that people see if you join AMORC or something. the American Rosicrucian Society. The first lodge, going back to Manly P. Hall, Manly P. Hall's father was the person who established the first Rosicrucian lodge in North America.
Didn't know that.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. What was it? I'm sorry, it's been years since I've looked into it, but he did that. Number two, what was it? Number one, or not the official one? Number two was Vancouver in Canada, and then the third went down to where you're talking in California. There, I guess it's the Pasadena area, and that's where a more public version of it developed. But yes, so there is a direct link if
And
you start to.
And I think that's where
follow
Jordan Maxwell first came across him or met him. I think it was in Pasadena.
Yeah,
I've had Jordan on the show many a times.
Really?
Oh yeah.
Wow.
Yep.
Good on you.
But
Jordan is being so instrumental in helping so many people.
Yeah.
It was just amazing. Yeah.
He will be missed. And you know what scares me? Back to I guess I keep bringing up the AI because I really think that, like I said earlier, that there could be a helping hand, guiding hand to push this type of future down our throats. And what scares me with all the merging AI technologies is that we may unleash something, like some kind of dark non-human energy or entity that pierces the veil and latches onto these AI technologies, like a parasitic poltergeist or kind of like a non-human ghost in the machine. You know what I mean? Like,
100%. We are being set up for the technocratic state. Okay.
Because
this,
if these
this
things
$500 billion announcement, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
I'm going to upset some people, but it's a Stargate. We're being told that now. Right. Now we're going to get mRNA for everything. Where the hell is Bobby Kennedy? All of a sudden. Who's being off the map all of a sudden? What the hell's going on?
And could those NaNO particles within those mRNA, could that bring some type of weird voodoo occult magic, or it's like a portal, you know what I mean? Where it's
absolutely,
it's changing your body chemistry,
We're still thinking that the way that we've been taught to think has been carefully curated so we don't figure this out. I liken it a lot to, it's like horses with blinders. We are taught to see what we see and not in the peripheral vision. If you're familiar with the paranormal occurs in the peripheral vision. The eye is trained to look forward. We are the beast of burden that's being ridden upon. I was trying to create a model of history many years ago. I was like, how is it that we have the occult forces that have been with us? And if I were to create a model of history that was saying that there was this non-human element through our history, how would I create a model to explain that? Where we could both think we are aware and yet be directed by unseen forces. And it came down to that, the idea of the horse and its blinders. And we can illustrate the blinders in different ways. They can be perceptual based off of our language, our notions of science, down to how we see things. And I believe these perceptual blinders, as well as the fact that frequencies, we see a small amount of the visible spectrum. We know we hear a small amount. These have been restricted. We've been dealing with a dampening. There's a dampening device. I believe humans are a lot more capable, are a lot more powerful, and we certainly did not come about to be through Darwinian evolution. That to me is quite obvious. I mean, this is very naive. So how could we explain it? And there's a rider on our backs, and that is the non-human force.
Mm.
We are beasts of burden for the non-human force, and it is extracting our life force in ways that we do not understand. We look at the cymatics of how cities are organized, how architecture is organized. It is harvesting energy. Stadiums are built for energy harvesting. We know this, right? Sports teams, because at the end, it's a battery. You have the opposing teams because you're trying to have the opposition, and it's building a battery. It's all about the energy. And in psychoanalysis, it would be called the libidinal political economy, meaning the political economy of the libido, of our energy. Our emotions are very powerful. Anybody who's ever been in an argument with their partner or their child will realize how physically draining an intense emotional encounter is. I mean, I've done it. You've probably done it. I mean, I could do a 12-hour shift at physical labor is easier than an intense argument. There is a lot of energy in that. So
it's kind of oxymoron because that energy is made to drain our energy, you know.
That's it.
And go ahead.
No, please go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, because you brought up energy, and I was want to ask you this, man. So with this non-human influence, whatever it is, the dark side, you know, that is subconsciously or consciously guiding those in power and influence to push the earth towards this transhuman smart grid world, just like you're talking about. So we have right now 5G, for a tiny example. If we are being constantly bombarded by this invisible soup of frequencies that are being emitted via Wi-Fi, satellite, cell towers, cell phones, just to name a few, could these invisible frequencies create or potentially create the perfect environment for these entities to remain in this reality for longer periods of time? On top of all that, these frequencies can drain one's energy to the point to where we can more easily be controlled, manipulated, and possibly inhabited by these entities.
100%. It's just in plain sight now. All right. I have no doubt. I think it's been going on the whole time. I think you look at a lot of indigenous societies like Native Americans, Aboriginals, etc. They know exactly. They're all their legends talk about this. They understand. So why there was such an aggressive campaign to genocide them, because they do have the knowledge still that was wiped out. The religions. And I don't want to make it sound like I'm being intellectually lazy by any stroke. But again, Pierre reminds us, you know, where is religion coming from? The Latin religare, which is to bind or moor a ship. And this stuff goes all right back into, I don't know how much you've explored with maritime admiralty law.
Well, you're talking about current, you're just talking about, you know, like money and all that, which is money is currency. A current is energy, you know.
That's right. Absolutely. It's all about the energy. It's energy units. And again, with the finance, this is how you can manipulate it. I was going to do a screen share because this is maybe, now that we sort of prefaced it with a few of these good things that we've had, it was a little bit of a rocky start because it's a bit of a bumpy road to get on to really open our minds in the way that we need to, because we're looking at the non-controlled human system. So very quickly here, you'll see I'm writing about oil, the ontological interface layer. This is something when I was studying philosophy when I was a student, I was looking at an ontology is basically a descriptor system for a reality itself in philosophy. When you're trying to explain how the world works, it's a fancy word for maybe like a cosmology. You have your meta concepts and then the hierarchy of concepts. And and one of the things that was amazing that I came across, they broke it down to the ontological interface layer, or oil. When you think about the role oil took in the world in the last century, oil was the thing that defined how the world worked geopolitically.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And now we hear, to tie into your thing with AI, that data is the new oil.
Mm-hmm.
Our smart devices are the new oil. This is what is centering around the world. And as we know, these things are monitoring everything. People have their smartwatches, their heart rate. We can have things that even monitor your brain waves while you're sleeping. Your words, everything is going to go through the smart grid. Combined with, it's not AI by itself, it's an AI combined with a smart grid that will centralize and crunch all the data to create this technocratic super dystopia. And I hate to break it to people, but it is no respecter of nations. This is a global plan. This is the great work, as certain societies like to call it. So we got oil. And I'm just going to quickly jump over here and just to get an idea. This is something that I was working on. So if let's say I'm a negative 4D entity or entities, 6D, whatever it is. I'm not saying I know exactly. The way it works is it invades the 3D realm via the 2D flat. Okay. Negative 4D doesn't come in and just attack, manifest in the physical 3D, and then attack that 3D. These are master strategists have taken over worlds. They're very good at it. They've been doing it for a long time. So they invade it via the flat. What do I mean by this? Just like we were talking about that mirror, it's flat. There's that. When the actor was talking about staring into the mirror is flat, and then it becomes the portal to invite the entity through. Mm-hmm. And when you go into looking at a whole relationship, and you look in the Bible and Lucifer and all of these things, or we go back to Sumeria, what do we see? We see the invention of agriculture, law, accounting, etc., crop up all at the same time. The old gods gave men tools, the Promethean fire, so to speak. So look, you got your legal, accounting, and finance, and the gloss of language. It's a metaphysical system that insinuates itself into 3D space-time events. It creates classifications and then orders these interactions in our physical world. It's a loop between metaphysical and the physical. 2D abstractions as extraction units. So we're trying to go between, say, what we're trying to talk about is the physical and the immaterial. And these concepts is how they take over worlds.
The concept trying to make everything inverted?
Inverted? Well, just think of it today. If the nation has money, what does it do? It can start to use this money to build infrastructure. You're literally physically changing the way the 3D reality works. Mm-hmm. We got financing, right? You can't build that road or do anything without financing. You need financing. Similarly, you don't have financing, you can't buy these units of things. You can't buy the raw materials. You can't do all of these things. So it all comes through the finance. And the legal system and the financial system are one of the same thing. There's a big difference between the law and the legal system. The legal system is a system of black magic. Now, I know I'm throwing in a lot here, but I just like to get people to see things a little differently. How are we forced to do things that are unfair and unjust in our world today? It's all operated, all laws, all statutes are coming through and applied to persons. Persons. People never stop to ask themselves, what is a person? They say a person is a human being. No, a person is not a human being. And it's not a gender neutral term that we use to describe people. A person comes from the Latin persona. Mm-hmm. It's a mask. Mm-hmm. The old gods, to tie back into your thing about the actor, you know what? Back in the Roman times, people would don a mask and then become that god when they went to parties or whatever. Oh, look, I'm Diana. You're this. And you became that god. Jim Carrey's old movie, The Mask. The mask, when he dons it, takes over who he is. Mm-hmm. And all statutes and everything relate to persons. A person is a corporate structure. It is a legal invention that you identify with as the flesh and blood human being. But you are not a person. The simplest way to explain it is the governments have set up a legal voodoo doll. They've created a voodoo doll for their black magic legal system. Now you can stop me and ask questions because I know that's some pretty dense stuff.
What you just said about the mask and how wearing different masks to represent different gods. The Rothschilds, I believe, held a party back in, I think it was 1972, called the Surrealist Ball. Yeah. The Surrealist Ball, where they're wearing all types of different crazy headdresses. Mm-hmm. Oh man, it's very satanic and dark, you know.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, this is the way these people party. Hey, want to get possessed by a demon this weekend? No. That's what we're dealing with here. Right? We invite them in. Natural law. None of this can occur without our consent. None of it. But we are tricked. We are coerced to inviting them in. The vampire has to be invited into our home. The demon has to be invited into our body.
I think this AI is going to trick us with all the mRNA and everything else, all the other emerging AI technologies, and that's pushing us to this transhuman dystopian world. I believe these dark factions, these non-human intelligences that are working with the dark factions physically here on Earth are pushing this because they know this is going to make us where we are tricked. We lose we possibly lose our body autonomy and make us more hackable, you know?
Absolutely. It's already happened. We see from what we've been going through in the operation in the last 5 years. That whole thing required your consent. Mm-hmm. Highly coercive, but it required your consent. People had to make some hard choices, and no judgment coming here from me.
It's your choice. It's your choice, but you may lose your job if you don't do it.
Absolutely. So I understand it's a very individual thing, and people have to work out what is relevant for them. And I realize people don't quite understand the implication of that choice. But I'll tell you this much, and this is what people don't understand. I've studied the law, the legal system. I've studied finance. All of this. We have been tricked so badly that people understood the degree. People are like, I'm waking up from the Matrix. You have no clue. I'm going to be very Jordan Maxwell on people here for a minute. You haven't done your homework. They use Jordan's information like it was entertainment. This stuff is not entertainment. Do you know banks do not loan you, the bank does not loan any of its own money. When they loan you money for your mortgage, your death pledge that you sign, none of that credit that they extend to you comes out of the bank's money. Not one penny. Do you know where that money comes from?
What's that?
You create the credit.
We are the currency.
We are the living being. These are corporations. They are dead entities. They can only be animated through the spirit of living beings. So you're slaving away your whole life. And do you know the way it works? By the time you've even signed that mortgage application, by the time you walked out the door, the bank has made 4 times the principal. Like you see, I say a word like accounting, people are like, that's boring. Yeah, they're really good at hiding the truth. The truth is hidden deep in a lot of boring legal documents, the way the accounting system works, the way the financial system works. Man, this whole the whole thing has already been set up that they can take everything. You want to disagree with me? Go look at the book, The Great Taking. You want to disagree with me? Ask me how much Russia has taken control of its own assets. How is it that Russia's assets have been frozen? Because they don't own it. Euroclear owns it. These clearinghouses are a whole different idea than people realize. So I know I've thrown a lot of weird abstractions here, but I want to whet people's taste for what's going on.
I was just stopping the screen share for right now. That's all.
Yeah, please. I'm sorry. I should have done it earlier too. But I think when people, the truth community has a long way to go in seeing exactly how far this is going along the whole time. And the banking system, the legal system and the financial system are 2 sides of the same coin. When you think you're talking about law, you're talking about commerce. When you think you're talking about commerce, it's actually law. That might sound like it's just some gobbledygook, but if you study it in depth, like I have, they are working together. And it's so compartmentalized that the lawyers don't understand what the other side is doing. And you throw in some accounting, and only some big accounting nerds. I follow people like this. Understand. And nobody wants to look at this, right? Because it's boring. It's not sexy for things like on podcasts. But this is how the financial system is many, many multiples greater than the real economy. The whole financial system is an inverted triangle. And we're this little tip at the bottom. And it's this giant superstructure metaphysically that is dictating and controlling how we live. This is part of the reason that we are getting poorer. The more it financializes, the poorer we get. To the point, that's why, dollar is worth a penny compared to what it was in 1913. Because the financial system, it's not just the national debt. It's all debt. It's all been debt. We haven't had money in the system since the 30s. There is no money. People say, I work for money. No, you work for debt. These are all promissory notes.
So the system in the very beginning was created, you think, to turn this into a feudalist type society and world?
Oh yeah. Yeah. The point I was going to show in this is that what people don't appreciate is when you're dealing with beings, entities that aren't limited by space-time in the same way that we are in our linear time, it doesn't matter how long it takes to conquer a world. What matters is that it works.
And they have different parameters than we go by.
Absolutely.
We think we're playing a certain game, but they are the game. They can control the game.
Oh yeah. And it's really brilliant when you think of it. This is why, it's really well done. This is the great work. We talk about certain groups, they love to talk about their great work. What is the great work? It's to bring us to this point. And the point that we're going to be coming into in the next few years and decades will be the completion of the great work. And at that point, there is no more human resistance. It will be complete. The potential for shaking it off will not exist. I don't like to be dark and pessimistic, but I'd really like people to get off their butts and realize the gravity of the situation, how deep it goes, and what we really actually have to debrief ourselves on to understand how far this mind virus has wormed its way into our existence. It's very incremental.
And it seems like with everything you've been talking about, seemed like this parasitic non-human force, of course, is collaborating with certain figureheads in the world.
Of course.
But it seems like they are trying to rebuild their Tower of Babel moment and finish it.
Very exactly. This is it.
What does that mean to you? What does that mean to you? Because, you know, of course, a lot of people that they think that was to separate all languages.
Humans,
no,
if you want to look at
than that.
Oh yeah. Well, it's a good way to, if I were to create a metaphor, go to an Indian reservation and look at the deplorable condition that those once very proud people live in. The fast food, overweight, riddled with drugs and poverty. They're shadows of what they used to be.
Mm-hmm.
That's our collective condition going forward. It already is. We are so much more. The whole point is to take beings that are so powerful, magical, capable, beautiful creator beings, sparks of the divine itself, and to suck it up and take it and convert it into a beast of burden. Donkey doesn't realize. Never see that, hear that movie, Once We're Warriors, about the Maori, New Zealand.
Mm-hmm.
That's us. That's our fate. We don't get our shit together. And
well, the thing is, we keep buying into it, you know, because just like bringing up AI again, you know, AI emerging technologies with everything we've talked about with that's related, the offshoots of things that relate to AI, you know, mRNA, just one tiny example. But
yeah.
But I was just saying that that's all orchestrated to act as a Trojan horse to where we do accept it. And then when we accept
absolutely. Again, we have to consent to it. We have to, people will demand it. I want it. What was the announcement this week? We're going to use the AI, and of course they have a good marketing pitch. The cure for cancer, individualized.
That's what I was about to say. Yeah.
Every disease we will have. Well, I remember, and you're younger than me. I was a kid, and I remember watching it live when it was a thing on TV. But the original 1980s V series, right? That old classic one. There's so much great knowledge in that. And so the visitors come, and they do all their stuff, and people are starting. You know, they set up a totalitarian state, right? They silence the dissent. They take over the media. And when they realize, oh, shoot, people are starting to sort of catch on, the mass populace is starting to catch on, what do? They hold a press conference in LA, and what do they promise to give the humans? The cure for cancer, just before they rip off their mask to see that they're just the lizards.
the same with Childhood's End. I don't know if you've seen, of course, not talking about the book, but the actual series. It's like a 3, 4, 6 part series. I don't know, episodes. Childhood's End at the very end, just like
I read the
B,
book.
but just, but in the, comes out as a devil with horns and a tail, pitchfork, with a child. That is the Trojan horse.
It is. And the Trojan, that is a metaphor for how they came in the first place. I mean, our DNA is not even ours. It's being hijacked. We've been edited so many times. This has gone through. I mean, this is what you're looking at with the works of Pierre is explaining. And that's what we're going to do every time. We are tricked, we are coerced, and it's through our own greed, fear, and sense of inadequacy that we do this, right? And so when it comes to, and I'm not saying it's just all negative out there. I want to live with a positive message of hope. And I want to really rally people because this is the time. If there was ever a time. I'm sorry, I'm very emotional about it, but I see what it is. We have the chance to throw the shackles off. You see the tarot card, the devil card in the tarot. The chains are loose. People bind themselves willingly to it. All they have to do is take them off. But it means that we really got to put on our big boy pants here and shake it off, because we're dealing with a situation. The greater cosmos, there is, and I know because I've had experiences with this, there is a lot of positivity. Most of the cosmos is very positive. Okay, the interdimensional realms, very positive. But you see, these negative entities and all of this, whether we want to see it or not, they are our teachers. We either learn to shake this stuff off on our own with no outside savior coming to save us, or we don't. And if we don't, we're not worthy. And we should be kept limited to this planet and not spread things out, because we would be dangerous, horribly dangerous. It would be like terrible tourists visiting a beautiful place and destroying it. This is the cosmic egg. And this negativity is a test to see if we are worthy of something much greater. And if we either do it or we don't. Just like a little baby chick in an egg. I remember being on the farm. The farmer told me, one thing you must never do is crack the egg open for the chick. So why? I believed him, but why? Well, because the shell is not only protecting it, but the chick has to be strong enough to break the egg itself. If you break that egg open for that baby chick, that chick will not survive in the world. It will be a defect. It will be weak. And humanity's test at this time, we are that baby chick. We can break out of this shell of this negativity, of these interlopers, as I like to call them. We can figure out what they're doing. We can go through and stop just blaming them and own our garbage and realize what's wrong in ourselves, go deep within, cast it off, cast off the addictions, cast off the violence, cast off the division, learn how to understand that we're supposed to be sharing the resources. We're not supposed to be having a hierarchical society. A hierarchical society like this is alien. It is not natural. This is a system of domination. There is no hierarchy, the sacred order. That's what hierarchy translates into. It is a method of colonization. So we have a great chance going forward. Do we go within and see everything that's wrong and really learn about what's happened to us? Are we willing to throw off our religion and all of our attachments to these things that we hold dear? The notion of our different nations and everything else? Do we really do that introspection, see what we're fighting, reject it, and win, or not? And that's the grand test. And that's why these negative beings are actually doing us a great service, just like bad health or anything else. Bad health teaches us how to be healthy. Anything negative in life, we alchemize.
I call it our trial by fire moment in history.
Our
This
what?
is it. This is our trial by fire moment as a civilization.
Absolutely. That's right. We do it or we don't. And, the greatest mercy would be if it was just a big flood and we're wiped out. What's even worse is it actually succeeds and we get this farm set up. And it was not going to look much different than the Matrix in the end. We are going to just be gelatinous beings generating energy for this in a libidinal economy. It will be looking like that. That is not so far off the mark if we're not careful. And that is the reality of what we're working up against. But it's the greatest opportunity. And there are those of us here who've come in to assist, but we've had to be mind wiped too. We've had to follow the rules of the natural law. And those people we've called in the past prophets and holy people. And they're here because they have extreme compassion for this species. But they have to play by the rules of natural law. And it's our job to listen, to overcome our self-limitations and our biases. And if we do, wow, we got great stuff. We have the most beautiful moment coming. And I think the hour will be darkest before the dawn. But nobody's coming to save us. The people who are going to come to save you are the people who are trying to plead and explain this stuff to you. But people want their comfort and convenience. They say, leave me alone. Or watch 1976 Network. Just leave me alone. We keep up like that. If we just keep making the excuse, well, I got to take care of me and my own. I got to take care of me and my family. We keep doing these excuses. If we keep saying, but I needed my job because I needed this, because I needed that. Every time we concede, they gain ground. This has been a long incremental process. So we got to give ourselves a good hard think here. We got to stop being seduced by the charlatans. They're snake charmers. They're nothing but glorified snake charmers. And we got to stop listening to their sweet words being whispered into our ears. And we got to cast it off and go within. Sorry, I don't mean to be preachy, but the time is so critical. And I really thank you.
That's a perfect way to end it. This part one discussion. And just like you said, but you mentioned network, I'm as mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore.
That's right. That's right.
That was a perfect way to end it. I have many more notes that I like to touch, but I'm going to save that for the part two because I did not want to interrupt your closing thoughts because that was a perfect segue to end this show to segue into the part two. But man, Dan freaking Armstrong, thank you so much for coming on the show, man. Look forward to part two and we'll definitely keep in touch and thank you very much, man.
Thank you.